good morning, and welcome to Granite Creek's second, I think, webinar. This one will be recapping a lot of the accomplishments that we've made over the year, talking about the drill program, talking about the recent acquisition of Copper North, as you probably saw, and what's on deck for the rest of the year and into 2021, if you can believe it, 2021. So just really quickly, by way of introduction, Granite Creek is a member of the Metallic group of companies. You may be aware of us. There's 3 in the group. We started with Metallic Minerals, and then Group 10 Metals joined, and then Granite Creek in 2019. It's a collaboration of exploration companies. We share a similar philosophy of picking up some of these brownfields projects with excellent infrastructure in top districts within primarily North America is where we're focused. It's what we know best, and keep the political risk as low as we can. So during bear market cycles, we were able to pick up some of these assets that frankly in other markets, we just likely wouldn't have been able to do. So each is a separately traded, separately run company with different focuses on metals. So Metallic is obviously focused on silver in the Keno district of Yukon. Group 10 is focused on nickel PGE in the Stillwater district of Montana, both next to operating mines now, thanks to Alexa restarting very recently. And Granite Creek in the Minto copper belt of Yukon as well, and just south of the operating Minto mine. So that's in a nutshell. We share a little bit of internal personnel, a CFO, and we have a very deep technical bench in each company that we're able to kind of just bounce things off each other. So we have access to a lot more brain power that way, and we keep costs down. So in a nutshell, that's the Metallic group. Feel free to contact me if you want to know more about either of the other companies, sister companies. And with that, I will turn it over to our esteemed President and CEO at Granite Creek, Mr. Tim Johnson.
Thanks, Chris. That's a great introduction, a great introduction to the Metallic group. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. It's great. Really appreciate the support. There's some names on the attendee list that I don't recognize, and I would hope that some of you folks are Copper North shareholders who've tuned in to see what we're going to do with the project now that we have it. Welcome to any Copper North shareholders out there to the group. We appreciate all of our shareholders, and we want to show you how we think we can advance the combined projects and show what the blue sky is. So let me get to the screen sharing portion of the event here. There we go. Here we are. Here's our new cover slide for the presentation. This is actually standing on what we call the Green Monster, which is the well-mineralized rock, some in and around the Discovery Trench for the Carmacks deposit. And this is looking out over to the south at the other zones at Carmacks. Stu and now Carmacks North is just behind us. Our forward-looking statement available on our website for your nighttime reading. As Chris mentioned, we are a group of companies. There are 3 groups in the company, 3 companies in the group. There is the high-grade silver, Metallic, platinum, palladium for Group 10, and of course the newest entrant into the group, Granite Creek, launched in January 2019, and now the first company, and I'm quite proud to say this, to have resources in the group. Now, it took a merger to get those resources, but, you know, that still counts. Again, similar business philosophy, acquire large brownfields land packages, bottom of the metal cycle, and then use modern technology to advance that. And that theme is sort of weaves itself through all 3 companies, and it's going to be even a greater focus for us moving forward. Granite Creek's goal, short-term goal, is to delineate a minimum 1 billion pounds contained copper. We think with the acquisition and the adjacent blue sky ground that we have, that short-term goal is going to be very short indeed. Contained metal at Carmacks currently is about 440 million pounds contained copper, and we see several opportunities to grow that at Carmacks, and some significant opportunities to grow that at we're now calling Carmacks North, which used to be Stew. We've got some very good targets out there. We're eager to get a drill back onto the ground on and to develop those. Can see where we are. For those new to the story, we are in central Yukon. You access the property from paved highway at Whitehorse to Carmacks, and then government maintained road into the project. Our project's roughly 177 square kilometers within the high-grade Minto Belt. Good access to road with a deep water port at Skagway from paved road from Carmacks, and grid power is within 12 kilometers of the project. Again, this is what we're calling the great big green monster. This is a great photo to give you an idea of how close the surface of the oxide copper mineralization is. Just a few notes about the Carmacks copper deposit itself. Just under 24 million tons of measured and indicated at grade in 0.85% copper. That equates to 446 million pounds. 325 of that are the oxide, with an initial 141 million pounds of sulfide. We see the real potential here in the short term to grow that sulfide resource, which underlies the oxide. Depth of that varies from some near surface all the way down to 250 meters at portions of the deposit. Again, globally, that's 237,000 ounces of gold and 2.4 million ounces of silver. There was a PEA in 2016 restated and refiled in 2017, hence the 2017 name on it. And their base case produced about $166 million net present value based on 325 copper and 1350 gold, but prices have changed significantly since then. On this chart, you see projected metal prices and what the sensitivity to the net present value of that asset is. So at today's prices, we're sitting at over 325 copper. We're sitting around 1,900 gold. So again, this is just based on the preliminary economic assessment, looking what the metal prices do to the net present value of that asset. But we're in that ballpark, and we see that as a really good start for a company launched only 2 years ago, January 2019, to get to this stage this quickly. We're pretty proud of. So we have consolidated the southern portion of the high-grade Minto Belt. We have several zones that we feel we can quickly build resources on. The Carmacks zone itself, 1 to 7 zones within that deposit have significant sulfide potential that underlies. As you get further, the zones 12 and 13 down in the bottom portion of that bubble there are more sulfide focused. So zones in 12 and 13, the sulfides have less of an oxide cap. So we think we can rapidly grow sulfide resources there very near surface. And then in the Carmacks North area, formerly the Stew, we did drill zone A this year. We've got some very interesting results, our very interesting rocket lab, and we're waiting for the results. And that's going to build the basis for inaugural resources next year. We don't believe we have enough drilling to publish or not to publish something significant, but we're really getting a better understanding of the orientation of the mineral and what areas are open and where we can develop. We have in all of our compilation work, especially on the northern part, most of the geophysics done in the past has been fairly low penetrating. A lot of it goes back to the 1980s. Modern geophysics, modern IP surveys are much more sensitive and see a lot deeper. So that's going to be one of the things that we'll be looking to do next field season ahead of drilling, is try to resolve some of these targets a little bit better with a geophysical tool that we know works very well within the belt. We know that from discussions with Minto and previous operators. So that's one of the tools we're going to bring in. Again, on the Carmacks deposit itself, looking at a sixth section through the northern part of the deposit in Zone A. One of the things we notice is that there seems to be a fairly constrained prospective corridor for the high-grade pods to show up. So we've identified that. That's going to be our focus moving forward, to focus our efforts on that corridor. You can see that the dot portion of this section is predominantly oxide. But you get into a transition zone, and then you get relatively untested sulfide beneath. That's not very deep down. That's about, what do we hear? About 280, I think, meters from surface. So that's not deep drilling. So we think we can explore across all the sections that area in order to build out our sulfide. And then we did drill Carmacks as well this year. We put 2 holes in Carmacks. This is the 13 zone. Historic drilling there. This is not that old. This is 2017 drilling, around that era. And they did get some pretty good intercepts, 0.67 over almost 100 meters. Our first hole looks like we've got a good intercept of mineralization, assays pending. Got into a little bit of fault trouble over in here, so there are some questions. We will have to put another hole in here to kind of get some orientations on things. But even if we end up, sort of cut off here, that's not a bad block of mineralization, running almost 100 meters in length and about 90 meters wide. So I'll leave you folks to do the math on that. And we probably have up to, I would say 800 to 1200 meters strike potential of that kind of a section. Inaugural drilling for us on the Zone A and at Carmacks North, formerly Stu. This hadn't been drilled since the 1980s. We went in, we did a sort of back of the envelope model. We had one of our modeling guys do some work on this and kind of put it into a 3D perspective and spin it around and help us choose the first few holes that we were going to drill in the zone. Felt comfortable with these holes that we were targeting higher grade mineralization. We were seeing higher grade mineralization in the first 2 holes that were targeting this red band here. And then the third hole that we collared in mineralization, oxide mineralization, saw, the top of the hole was well oxidized, and then did get into some sulfide further down. So we're still working out the orientation of these ore bodies. We suspect the previous operators thought they were oriented a little bit more north. Again, the 3D model told us there might be something different going on. We tested that model this year, and I think we confirmed that there is at least a potential second orientation to the mineralization, if not the primary one. So that gives us lots of targets for next year. Again, I would like to do focused IP survey over the area, modern one that sees a little bit deeper and try to get some resolution before we go too crazy in a drill program. But I think with a modest program here, we can probably make a decision on whether or not there's enough material to publish a resource. Good coverage on a lot of elements over top of both the combined property, including the airborne magnetic survey that we acquired that had been flown in 2008. This is valuable data. It shows lots of trends in broad scale in the magnetics are helping us focus our programs. And then again, combined soils showing where there's some very interesting targets based on soils, including something new and interesting going out on the east part of the property there in Zone D. And some of those are starting to show up in the data that we've gotten from Copper North as well. So there is a trend out there that's probably going to take some trenching and a little bit more work to figure out before we drill. But I guess the point of that is that we have targets other than the sort of main ones that we'll be focusing on initially. and we will spend some time understanding those targets and developing plans to see if we can there's other resources within the claim block. Again, I'm sure some of you know, Minto Copper Belt is getting to be more well known, as folks like Nicolette Kovacs have written papers on it, and we're getting a much better understanding of the tenure of the mineralization and the potential genesis of it. I mean, it's a fairly well-defined northwestern corridor of foliated rocks that have since been intruded by the Granite Mountain batholiths, so that's moved things around a bit. It is challenging at times to kind of figure out where you are in the system, but I think we've got a really good team. I think they're starting to figure it out, and there's more information coming every day, sort of in regards to the potential for the belt. So we look forward to being able to relay that potential to the market, and also to potential joint venture partners, should that be the path that we take. Minto Mine, just to the north of us, they were running at half capacity. I know they're working to get that up to approach full capacity. Don't know where they're at there now. Reserve grade 1.7% copper is a little bit higher than what we were seeing down at Carmacks, but sort of pretty close to what we've seen at Carmacks North. So we're open to multiple development strategies. If we could get to a stage where it made sense for either a toll milling operation with material that we discover, or if there's a further consolidation to the belt, either by Minto itself or by a third party. We're open to all sorts of discussions, and hope to be able to relay those as they develop. Again, great jurisdiction to be working in. Major investment does continue to come to the Yukon. Good support from the federal and territorial governments, including infrastructure spending. Recent announcement of upgrades on bridges on the Free Gold Road, which will directly impact the company, and so give us better access to our project. Western Canada has some interesting grade in it, and the Minto belt is home to some of the highest grade, with Minto Mine itself on a copper equivalent basis close to 2%, and the Carmacks copper project, this is on the oxide only, just under 1.5% copper equivalent. The sulfide in a lot of places holds up really well, and we don't have the Carmacks North numbers in here yet, and we hope to be able to add those fairly soon. This is an interesting figure that we put together, and this just shows since May of this year how the growth in copper prices has affected the market cap of explorers and developers. And you can see the green portion shows that there has been lots of growth. We're lagging that a little bit, and I think a lot of it is people were waiting for us to complete the transaction and see how we're affected by that. But now that we're complete, I think we're going to see some share appreciation, a revaluation of the company. As we get our shareholder base built out. We are reaching out to as many groups as we can to get the story out there and get our share price up to where we think it should be. All right, milestones. Again, the company was launched January 2019, so we think this has been somewhat impressive, if we can tout our own horns, ramp up from a shell with no assets to acquiring a very good asset, acquiring a historic database, acquiring initial 30% interest in our neighbor Copper North. That was in our first year of operations. Year to date, we've completed that acquisition. We've launched a drill program, and we have completed a resampling program on historic core. Compilation of the results of historic core with this year's drilling is being worked on. We don't have assay back from this year's drilling yet. We expect to be able to put news out in that hopefully within the first 2 weeks of this month. We are working hard on our plans for next year, talking to geophysics firms, talking to drillers, talking to camp management. We would like to see an expanded program in there with a focus really on growing resources. Our initial year of boots on the ground of the combined company is to what percent of the resources can we add? And we're probably going to be 80% focused on that, with a 20% focus on some of the outlying potential zones that haven't seen enough work for us to really understand them. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but it's great work. We love to be doing it. A little bit of strengthening of our team, to 2 directors, John Cumming and Loy Chong Pong Tong, joined us from the Copper North board. So we strengthened our board in that regard. We have a very strong exploration and advisory team, including Debbie James, who ran our program this year, Scott Petzel, who was acting as VP Exploration for the group, Bill Harris, who was the vendor to the property and also keeps us appraised of working issues within the Yukon and where we can get good deals and equipment and how to keep our programs moving forward. So very appreciative of our team. Again, with the group itself, chaired by Greg Johnson, has had great success over the years, including Greg Johnson's founding of Nova Gold and their success at Donlin, Galore, and Ambler. And now the new group with the basically a major acquisition a year from 2016 from Keno through to Stillwater, Carmacks, and then group our Metallics La Plata. Lastly, but not leastly, where is the copper market at? Well, I don't think you have to sort of reach out too far to find an expert in the copper market that's going to tell you that the copper market will be in deficit, if not in deficit already. There may have been a bit of a hiccup in that timeline of when we're actually at deficit because of COVID. But I think we're going to see a decreasing supply and increasing demand, especially as we move to an electrified fleet worldwide, and as energy storage becomes the norm rather than the minor impact, and that's only going to be good for copper. We are I think we're on the uptick of a commodities bull market. I use that hesitantly because it seems every time the industry starts to say that, we pull back a little bit. But with increased infrastructure spending, with trying to kickstart the economy coming out of COVID, I think the metals and commodities themselves are going to be a great sector to be in. We follow spot copper fairly closely. Current market cap is just over $11 million, 96 million out. Options, roughly 9 million. 7.5-cent warrants at 7. Total warrants 44. Fully diluted 150. About $1.5 million cash on hand. Yes, as we move forward, we will be doing a future raise for a expanded drill program. I don't have timing on that yet, but if you have any interest, drop us a line, and we will inform you when we're up and running with that. So that is the presentation. How's everybody doing?
And I'm back. Thanks, Tim. That was great. I guess just on the copper front, I would add just taking a look at the performance of the US dollar lately. I don't want to get too into the macro part of things. Everyone's well versed enough in that, I'm sure. But if you haven't lately, take a look at the US dollar and the US dollar chart. It's dropped below a 91 handle for the first time in quite a while. It looks to be exceedingly weak, which is
good for commodities. Yes,
good for commodities, as that's what they're priced in, obviously.
Yeah.
So inbound question right out of the gate here from Buzz. Do you expect going forward that the gold results will grow in line with the copper, or could that be a bigger part of the story in 2021?
Interesting question. So it would appear at Carmacks North, that's fairly likely that the gold ratio will hold up quite well. In the Carmacks deposit proper, the northern portion, so the zone 1 through 7 that had the pit wrapped around it originally, again, once you get into sulfide, the numbers seem to hold up. A little bit further south in the 12 and 13 zone, there is more copper, broader intercepts of copper, a little bit weaker precious metal grades. So, I think we have the potential in that portion for a larger bulk tonnage scenario. But the question is, at what point do you trade off and go after the higher grade material? Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and I think there's lots to, I mean, that was our first drill program. There's some historic work and so on, but as we move forward and have the technical team do a lot of the desk work over the coming months too, I think we'll get a good sense of where to go next. And then cash position wise, I'm optimistic that it could be a pretty robust program at both target areas next year.
No, I think we can. Yeah, as you know, if the markets are good to us and we're able to put together another raise at a decent price, so it's less dilutive, it's going to be the goal. I think we'd be all right.
Yeah. Oh, there's a shortage of. Well, anyway, we'll get into that. Stop editorializing for you. Question from Gary: is the assay turnaround time improving? That's a tricky one.
Not significantly, unfortunately. It's currently, we're told, 6 to 8 weeks. So initial assays, our initial material was delivered to the lab middle of October. And that was actually another hole that they found during the drill program of historic hole that was unmineralized and unsplit. So the actual new drilling wasn't delivered too much later in the month. So we are expecting, so the initial assays could be coming in the coming weeks. The question is, do we get them in time and be able to sort of figure out what they mean and present them before sort of mid-December? And I don't know. That would be my goal, to get something to the market, to you guys, by mid-December, but we'll see. We're working hard to that, but the lab, you're right, Gary, is the problem at this time.
Okay, just a couple things. Thanks for the presentation, Tim. Question from James. What are all-in drilling costs there? How many meters do you plan to drill in 2021? And what kind of breakdown between Carmacks and Carmacks North? I guess that's somewhat of a 2 or 3 part question with we'll see probably from you thrown in there.
Yeah, so our all-in drilling costs this year were higher than expected. One of the reasons for that is there was more road development into Carmacks North, former Stu, than anticipated, so there was a bit higher cost. There was an option to go with helicopter, but if we'd gone with helicopter, we wouldn't have got that road work done. So the decision was made to prep ourselves for next year, and to spend a little bit to get to improve our access. So that was done. We anticipate all-in costs to be in sort of 350 to 400 a meter range. That's everything, assays, camp, all in. And that's, we know from other operators in the Yukon, you can get to there with a carefully managed program. So that's what it's going to be. So then the next question is, how many meters are we going to drill? Well, I can throw all sorts of numbers out there. A lot of it's going to depend on our correlation of the results this year. I would like to see something in the 10,000 meter range, maybe a little higher. What I've asked our team to do is to look at the zones, and I've given them a number for a resource bump that I would like to see the first year, and we're going to work backwards from that. So it's not to completely avoid the question, but there was a lot of work that we're doing behind the scenes to develop our programs, and to see what it's going to take to get to what I feel is a comfortable without blowing our brains out, a comfortable initial resource increase, and that's going to really drive what our focus is. Also, there is, I referenced it. There are a lot of zones on the property that have had, very little work, or work hasn't been done since the 80s and that. So we really need to evaluate those and see, what was the original reason for it being named a zone, how many drill holes were in it, what was the trenching done, and there's still more work that needs to be done in that regard. And the whole belt itself is well endowed with minerals, so there could be more new-ish discoveries on the property, so we can't ignore that potential. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, comprehensive. I guess just there's going to be one here that's going to involve a little bit of math, or
no, not math.
Talking about it was my understanding there would be no math. I think that's but so that'll just go back to the zone and the dimensions you were speaking of earlier. So we'll just jump back to that in a second, just so Tim, you can think about it in the background. David's question is a little bit related to James' questions. When do you expect 2021 drilling season to start, and how much funding would you be looking to raise? And
so we'll be targeting sort of end of May, early June type targets. I don't know what the snowpack this year is like. There's some areas that we could start probably a bit earlier. It's sort of a bit of a waiting game, but that's sort of a rough target. Like I said in the presentation, there is an IP survey we would like to squeeze in before we start to drill. Ideally, you get that completed before you start drilling. It just makes logistics with handling the camp without having overlapping crews in there. We don't know what our COVID restrictions are going to be for the new field season. There were restrictions this year in where personnel could come from and whether or not they would have to isolate outside of camp before going into camp. So until we get clarity on that, I'm not going to give a hard, month that we would start. We have plans in place, but we don't know how we're going to have to adjust them. As far as the financing go, I think it's probably going to be $4+ million, but again, until we sort of complete our plans and start to get our budgets in, I'm hesitant to make it more specific than that. But a lot of it's going to depend on how the market treats us. I don't think it would be wise to be doing that large of a financing at these prices. It's too dilutive to our existing shareholders. I want to see. We're going to work hard over the next coming weeks to really relay to the market what we have. So I think there's a lot of the market doesn't understand it. We're just ticking over into the copper bull now. And as as the sort of generalist investors start to look for a copper play, we want to be there and being able to deliver that message. So that's the work we got cut out for us.
And yeah, I guess I would add, with respect to the markets, if we do see a lot of continuing strength in copper, I mean, 350 is a pretty solid kind of psychological number for things to hit, and there's not a huge amount of companies at our stage with what we have and the kind of valuation. So we could, in the event that we do see some positive market reaction, we do have some of those warrants and things that we would probably expect to see coming in as a source of funding as well. It's happened with both the other companies in the group. So that would be something to be keeping an eye on as well. Great question from Gary. Gary has been keeping track of news, it seems. So question is, how are your relations with local First Nations groups?
This year was a weird year for developing and featuring relations. With leadership at Little Salmon Carmacks, we we appraise them of the work that we're going to do. We have a consultant who keeps them up to date with what we're doing, but we were unable to meet or discuss furthering that relationship this year due to COVID. There's no impediments that we know of. We, like I say, we have a consultant who keeps us informed of any issues, and at this time we don't know any. But we do recognize as a company that we need to find a better way, especially under the current environment, to have that engagement, to build those relationships, and we're committed to doing that. But this year was a weird year for that. You know, normally I would have gone and spent some time just sitting and chatting, and we just couldn't. Not even, there wasn't even a desire to do it virtually. It was some of the First Nations were so overrun trying to make sure that their communities were safe. That was their focus, and we understood that. We made sure that they were appraised of what we were doing, and we hired local where we could and where we wouldn't impact the health or the potential of the community by that hire, and we were very upfront with that. But that's just a long-winded way of saying it's been a weird year, and we're dedicated to building that relationship.
Yeah, and I guess just to follow up on that a little bit, just with respect to the group, we've been operating in Yukon as individuals with various different companies over the years, and with the companies in the group. And we also have a lot of actual Yukoners and lifelong Yukoners that have been involved in almost all the different areas of Yukon, and having relationships with the local First Nations there. So it's something that's top of mind, and we've been pretty good at developing with the various different companies. Like Tim said, this was a very weird year, and so I think we'll move that relationship forward pretty significantly as we move forward. I mean, we've moved forward in a lot of other ways, a lot of it being office and desk stuff, but now that we're more in the field and so on, we'll really do our best to nurture that relationship and build it. There is a follow-up question from David, well, related question, I suppose. What percentage of your workforce are First Nations? And I guess just to jump in front of that a little bit, like I said, a lot of this, what we've been doing has been office-based M&A type stuff and technical evaluation and so on. So there hasn't been a huge percentage of field work. With the other companies, again, that's been something that we've had an opportunity to do more of. But Tim, jump into that one.
Yeah, so we really did two programs this year. We did a summer program that was relogging and reassaying of core, and there was a soil and sort of program too as well. That soil program was predominantly a contractor, Yukon First Nations based contractor, completed most of that work. They did provide some other assistance for us. The resampling program was done by our own geologists. And then once we hit the drill program, I think it was predominantly, although no, that's not true. There were some, because they were a subcontractor, we weren't responsible, but there were some local First Nations working for the drill contractor as well. What the exact percent number, I don't have it at my fingertips. It definitely wasn't zero. And I would say it wasn't just a token individual here or there. We had to, like I say, hired a local contractor for some of our work. And I know that some of our contractors did hire as well.
Actually, a question that I was going to toss out to you that Gary flagged first. So from Gary, this question is purely speculative, but what can you tell us about the level of interest from potential buyers such as Pembridge?
Well, yes, the Pembridge guys. I haven't talked to them since we announced the close. We had kept fairly regular communication. I'm aware and had discussions with management at Pembridge about another initiative, about a road initiative that would benefit both companies. They're aware of what we're doing. They're aware of our potential resource expansion. They're very keen to see what our success is. There's been talk about whether or not it would make sense to develop mine expansion in the north. I mean, these were just over coffee type discussions. But I think what's sort of germane to the discussion is that I appreciate that the folks at Pembridge and Minto are forward thinking. They are looking sort of outside the box thinking whether or not they can drill the resources they need at Minto, whether they look to us to the south, whether there is expansion, whether there is the ability tacked on at Minto to process oxide material. I mean, all those things over the year have been topics of discussion. So I think that bodes very well, because it means that we can put ideas on the table, and it might be outside the current operations, but it will be considered. And I think that's a breath of fresh air compared to what some previous operations in the past had been very, very close-lipped and very tight.
So nothing in the works with Tesla at this point?
No, I can categorically deny.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yes, well, please do.
So last question from John, which is referring back to the green monster, as you called it. How much copper is indicated by changing of rock color from to the green shade that you're seeing there? Just maybe a little bit more of what that kind of indicates.
Okay, so
the azurite and the malachite in the other.
Yeah, so that's your malachite. So that's your copper oxide. That's the main #1 zone at Carmacks, which is grading over 1% copper. And some of that stuff is probably going to grade between 2 and 3% copper. So that's the nice stuff that you look for. But in the oxide, I would like to find the bright purpley bornite minerals that you see deeper down. Is what our focus is. Although, if at Carmacks North we could find another 5 million tons or something of the oxide material, that would make a marked difference to the economics at Carmacks. Because again, we always felt that the amount of material there wasn't quite enough for a sustained mining operation, 7-year mine with a 4-year payback. But a 12-year mine, for instance, might be. So more of the bright green, it would definitely help our situation.
Okay, just one last. I noticed there's a hand up, so we're going to take a shot at. I'm going to take a shot at turning Rob's mic on here. Asking to unmute.
Yeah, Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. We got you, Rob. How are you doing?
Good, gentlemen. You have to become Houdini to be able to buy stock in the United States in this company.
Great question.
It's unusual that you all have gone through great detail and essaying and surveying and prospecting, and you want to raise more money, and you want the stock to go up before you raise the money, so there's no dilution. But it becomes a point of discussion with me that it's just impossible. You can't. There's no ask. There's a bid occasionally, but there's no ask on the stock ever. So it's the most illiquid thing I've ever seen as far as, a company that's trying to be publicly traded in the United States. And I wanted to know how you plan on addressing that.
Well,
Tim, do you mind if I
you jump in, Chris? This is your bailiwick.
And by the way, I'm a supporter of the companies. I love the work.
But no, it is a valid comment, and we do have some. We are working on it. And I'll let Chris just outlay the massive program that we are working on.
In fact, Rob, that it's almost as though that was a planted question. That's how timely it is, and how much it's been top of mind. So we really kind of, since starting the company, we're focused on advancing it, and we really didn't kind of have an eye to bursting onto the scene until we had a lot of these ducks in a row, including closing this deal and acquisition, and now we are a company that we want to really get out there. So for the last few, well, I guess it's been a couple months now. What you're talking about is one of the things exactly that we've been working on. So we've made all the applications to level up our listing in the US from where it is now to that second tier on that exchange, and then the DTC eligibility as well, which enables the digital transfer of stock and so on. And we're doing a bit of a marketing push finally, that you can sort of see starting with this. And we just registered to do an event on the OTC, an OTC virtual mines and metals investor event. So that'll be sort of our first real foray into trying to tap that US market a little bit. And you'll see more and more of that. So the inability to trade and the illiquid nature of the stock is something that we've been well aware of, and that we're working hard to address. So within the next few weeks, you'll see some of those things achieved, and hopefully that'll be a good running start to get to solve some of those issues. And then we'll also be doing more and more of these outreach events, webinars that. And just various different one-on-ones and conferences and things like that. So we'll really get out there and start to tell the story, particularly with the fact that we now have a resource, we have drill results coming, we have a plan, and we have a copper market. So I think the time is really right for us to jump into the scene there more.
Yeah, I think a good point, Chris. I mean, really graduating in essence from the pink sheets to the QB. Is going to allow more brokers to be able to trade us, because a lot just won't. And the DTC. Once we have DTC, and you can have digital deposition of the shares, that's going to, because again, a lot of brokers stateside will not trade companies without DTC eligibility. So we've been working on that, and as Chris said, and it's pretty imminent that it's going to be there. So that should solve a lot of the questions and a lot of the issues that you've brought up. And thank you for that.
Yeah, and it's not just a matter of that some of the brokers in the US won't. It's that a lot of them can't. They're precluded from dealing with some of these pink sheet companies, and then there's the blue sky aspect of that too. So some internal will just not allow a pink sheet trade, and then others with the blue sky. You don't want to get too into the technical side of that, but unless you qualify for blue sky in a state, a broker can't recommend a client take a look at that stock. So when you level up to a QB or even a QX, QB is a great start. That opens up blue sky for a lot more individual states as well. So our universe of potential investors grows quite dramatically with that. So again, we're really looking to burst on the scene out of nowhere. Nobody's aware of Granite Creek Copper, but with the right efforts and word of mouth, not the least of those, I think that could happen.
When the wind has been blowing just right, I've been able to buy shares on E-Trade.
Right.
So just throw that out there. But thank you for your answer, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Yeah, keep on it, and Rob, I'll keep you
Well, we'll be announcing that graduation. Good. So there'll be a flashy news release about that.
Great.
It is material.
Thanks.
And then just on that front too, I mentioned this next event that we'll be doing. I think it's December 9th, and we'll news release that. In fact, I think the OTC exchange put out a news release this morning about that, so you can see the date and time and how to sign up and so on. And we'll also be releasing that probably starting Monday to promote it a little more with some other developments.
Perfect. Thank you.
That looks like it's it for the questions, Rob, if that covers that for you.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, guys.
Okay, well, thanks. We had everybody almost stick it right out to the end. And so if there's no other questions, comments, remarks. Tim, do you want to take us out?
Sure. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. Any of you folks out there that are Copper North shareholders, your shares should be converted any day now. Thank you, and welcome to the team. Welcome to the party.
Okay, thanks everyone. And if there's any questions outside of this, feel free to email me at cackerman@gcxcopper.com. It's all over the website, which we'll be updating all the time as well. And with that, thanks everyone. Have a great day. And yeah, best of luck. Thanks all.
Thanks all.